Boy, do I have an ironic story for you today. Ladies and gentlemen, we have an article here from Rock Paper Shotgun that is talking about a studio that apparently is being shut down before their latest game is even going to release. But the irony in this story is that this studio apparently focuses on anti-capitalist games. Yes, you heard me right. They focus on making games that are supposed to fight capitalism and basically talk bad about capitalism. And yet it is capitalism that is going to cause the shutdown of their studio just 2 weeks before their latest game comes out. I honestly think it's a hilarious story, ladies and gentlemen, and it's a level of irony that we don't get to see very often when we see these activists decide to make video games that are, based around activism, and nobody buys them, right? Nobody supports them, nobody cares about them, and it eventually leads to what it always leads to, which is the shutdown of the studio and the laying off of the developers. It's an unfortunate story, and yet we hear it over and over and over again. So let's get into this article from Rock Paper Shotgun. But of course, before we do, if you are new here, just consider hitting that subscribe button. I would greatly appreciate it, and like the video to push us out into that YouTube algorithm. Now, it seems like this developer, pretty much an indie developer, I guess, or maybe double A at its best, but it looks indie for the most part. But the headline reads, studio known for anti-capitalist games shut down by their publisher just 2 weeks before their newest game comes out. The developers of workplace comedy Say No More and anti-establishment roguelike Reignbreaker are closing down, and the news come just 2 weeks before their final punky action game is due to come out. Studio Fizbin has been struck by ongoing cuts at their parent company Thunderful, they say, and despite pitching follow-up projects to work on after Reignbreaker's release, none of these will go ahead, which means they will be winding down at the exact moment that you'd hope they'd be celebrating a payoff from years of work. Well, see, here's the problem, right? So when you make video games like this, you are inherently being divisive. I don't know if many people that want to play a video game that is basically just meant about attacking capitalism and so on the nose. You know what I mean? It's one thing to create a story that has anti-capitalistic sentiments based within its own world and its own lore, but it's another thing to be a studio that touts itself as an activist studio. It's unbelievable. Imagine being an anti-establishment studio and yet you are partaking in the same capitalism that you claim to hate so much. You are selling your video game to people. You are selling your video game, the idea of your video game, to investors. You are doing exactly what you say you are against every single day that your company exists, and yet here you are trying to partake in capitalism while attacking capitalism. And then eventually capitalism always wins, which is why it's such a great system that these leftists don't like. Our parent company, Thunderful, made the decision to drastically reduce internal development in November of 2024, which, as Thunderful CEO Martin communicated in the latest quarterly report, also affected Studio Fizbin, said founder Alexander Pieper in a statement on the studio's website, as noticed by game developer. Since then, we've been exploring various opportunities to work on after finishing Reignbreaker. Unfortunately, none of these projects will move forward, leading us to make this difficult decision. This means that Reignbreaker will be the Studio Fizbin's final game. And listen, man, I've always said, you want to make a woke game, you want to make an anti-capitalistic, you want to make whatever, that's fine. Go ahead. You have the right to do so long as you're not co-opting other IPs that were never that to begin with. And don't give me that bullshit media literacy nonsense that these wokies try to do to interject their politics into things that never really had it. They'll try to say, well, just because you don't see it doesn't mean that I don't see it. I'm like, bro, stop the whole fucking fake. It's so terrible when they try to do that nonsense. But anyway, that's besides the point. You are allowed to make whatever you want to make, man. But here's the truth of the reality of the situation is that you are making a video game for a customer, right? You're not making video games for yourselves, although you may think you are. You are making games for a customer. So that means you have to have a customer in mind when you are thinking about your budget, right? You cannot then splurge money on a video game that has a niche of a niche of a niche audience. There's not many people out there that are seeking anti-capitalist games. There just isn't. There might be a couple here and there that want to play it just because they're so politically motivated. But at the end of the day, man, you're not going to hit any mainstream media. You're not going to hit any mainstream level of success. Now, I'm not saying that they had a mainstream budget, but what I am saying is that they clearly spent too much money and didn't make enough, which capitalism tells us when that happens, chances are you're probably not going to last very long. It's just simple math at the end of the day. So they probably should have affected their budget a little bit more I guess, reserved. They probably should have maybe not spent as much money. Perhaps they should have been a little bit more careful, considering they were making video games for an audience that probably didn't show up. Let's be real. Let's be real. The audience didn't show up, most likely, right? I don't even know what this game did number-wise, but I gotta imagine it's probably fucking terrible. If anything, what's the name of this game? Say No More? Let's see if this game is on Steam. This game is... oh my god, dude. What is this game released 2.8 years ago? This game had a maximum concurrent player base of 85 2.8 years ago. There are 8 people playing this game right now, and it is most likely the developers. Are you kidding me right? Like, what the fuck, bro? This is what I'm talking about. This is what I mean. When you are making a video game that is inherently divisive and is all about anti-capitalism, there clearly isn't that big of a market for this particular kind of video game. And you decided that it was in your best interest to try to push this out there and hope for the best. This game is $1.49 right now, ladies and gentlemen. It is 90% off. $1.49 is the lowest recorded price, and that is the current price right now. They are having a giveaway sale, essentially, because the studio is closing down. So they're trying to get as much money as possible. So it really doesn't matter, man. This game's an absolute joke. This developer is a joke, and they should have known better before they went about their activism. But regardless, it is what it is. Publishers Thunderful recently slashed 80 to 100 jobs across their studios and said that they'll now focus on publishing games by outside studios rather than developing their own. It looks like the full effects of that decision are now being felt. If you haven't seen it yet, Reignbreaker is a very purple and black action roguelike about bringing down a tyrannical queen with plenty of spear chucking and upgrade choosing. Oh, so wait a second. Hold the fuck on. So Rock, Paper, Shotgun is allowed to use the term spear chucking, but we can't use the term. What the fuck? When James played its monarch toppling chain gunnery, he noted flashy isometric fights and pausing for a chat with some charismatic, lovingly hand-drawn, likely flirty side character. Sound familiar? James thought so too. It's so very, very Hades. He said, yeah, I highly doubt you're going to do Hades numbers. You want to know why? Because Hades focuses on being a good game first and their activism second. Let's not change the fact that Hades 2 absolutely made all their characters weird, androgynous, and ugly for activism. They obviously did. But at the end of the day, the Hades game is a fun game. I love the first one. The second one I have not played yet, but I gotta imagine it has a similar gameplay loop, which means I probably would like it too. But they still focused on gameplay first before they did anything else. You guys don't seem to be doing that. You guys seem to be focused on activism, and it came and bit you in the ass. Then it says, as for the theme, it's response to the rise in right-wing authoritarianism all around the world, the growing class divide and exploitation. According to community manager Ian Stewart, if any of that sounds intriguing, you can play the demo on Steam yourself. The game is due to release on March 8th. None of that sounds intriguing. None of this sounds I don't know who this sounds intriguing to, except for terminally online people on Twitter. I don't know who would in their right mind say, ooh, that sounds like a lot of fun, right? Nobody is thinking that, man. No, just like nobody would think, oh, a rise in left-wing authoritarianism. Nobody would find that interesting either. This is a big problem, man, in the gaming industry. But you know what? They're an indie developer. They can make what they want. They made their own IPs. They didn't co-opt anything, so at least they made their own stuff, and they're going to live and die by their woke sword. That's basically it. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Hope you did enjoy, and if you did, consider leaving me a subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. Don't forget to like the video, comment, let me know what you thought, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Hypnotic out.